Have you ever sat quietly and wondered when everything started to change between you and your children? Maybe it was a holiday where you spent more time in the kitchen than at the table, or a birthday when the only call you got came late and felt rushed, like a chore crossed off a list. Maybe it was none of those things, just a growing silence, a feeling in your chest that something has shifted, like you're no longer part of the rhythm of their lives. You're orbiting their world, but not in it, present, but invisible. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not broken for feeling it. There comes a moment in many lives, often after 60, when we find ourselves reflecting more than rushing, feeling more than fixing. It's in these quiet reflections that a different kind of pain can settle in, the pain of being overlooked, unheard, and most heartbreakingly unneeded by the very people we once held close every day. But here's the truth: we so rarely speak aloud. The love we give doesn't always come back the way we expect. And when that happens, it doesn't mean we failed. It means life moved, people changed, and sometimes we forget how to belong to ourselves without trying to belong to others first. Let me tell you about Claire. Claire is 67, retired teacher, widowed 5 years now. Her 2 sons live hours away, both with families of their own. She used to get weekly calls, Sunday check-ins, sweet photos of the grandkids. But now, it's texts. Sometimes a full week passes without a word. And when she does call, she hears background noise, distractions. She can tell they're multitasking her. And she always hangs up wondering, did I do something wrong? The ache Claire feels isn't about control. It's about connection. About that quiet fear that maybe the chapter where she mattered most has closed and no one told her. But here's the part no one sees about Claire. She's tired. Tired of keeping conversations light when she wants to scream. Tired of smiling politely at photos of vacations she wasn't invited to. Tired of being the one who always reaches out first, who remembers the birthdays, who bends her schedule for theirs. And one evening, she sat alone in her kitchen, poured a cup of tea, and asked herself the question she had spent years avoiding. What if I stopped trying so hard? That's where peace begins, not in getting them to call more, visit more, remember more, but in releasing the chase. You see, the first step toward peace when family grows distant is not confrontation. It's not guilt-tripping or pulling away in anger. It's recognizing your own worth beyond your role in their lives. You are more than someone's mother, someone's father, someone's elder. You are still you, and you deserve a life that reflects that. The second quiet shift comes when we stop measuring our value by how often others check in. Nathan, a 72-year-old who used to run his own business, told me something I'll never forget. He said, "My phone used to ring all the time. Now, it's mostly silent. At first, it felt like a punishment. But then I realized I was waiting for others to tell me I mattered, instead of living like I already did." He started walking every morning. Same path, same time. Over the weeks, he began to wave to familiar faces. One day, a young woman who passed him daily stopped and said, "I look forward to seeing you every morning. You always look so calm." That one sentence meant more than a dozen missed calls from his kids, because it reminded him, presence isn't about being surrounded, it's about being seen, even by strangers, even by yourself. We grow up learning how to take care of others, feed them, comfort them, make sure they're okay. And somehow, in all that loving, we forget how to do those things for ourselves. But the peace you seek after 60 doesn't come from your children understanding you better. It comes from you understanding yourself deeper. It's okay to mourn the version of your family that once was. It's okay to feel the sting of absence, the ache of being forgotten. That pain is real, it's human, but it doesn't have to define you. You are not a backup plan. You are not a second thought. And you are certainly not a burden. You are a whole, breathing, beautiful being with a lifetime of stories, scars, and strengths that deserve to be honored, whether or not your children acknowledge them. Let's take a breath together, right here, in this moment. Imagine that you're releasing that ache, even just a little. Imagine what it might feel like to wake up tomorrow without waiting for someone else to validate your day. What if you went to the cafe anyway, Wore your favorite sweater even if no one would see it. Learned something new, simply because you could. This isn't about pretending you don't miss them. Of course you do. It's about choosing not to let that longing rob you of your present joy. After all, you were a whole person before they arrived in your life. You are still whole now. And when you start walking through your days with that quiet, unshakable knowing, something unexpected happens. You stop bending. You stop waiting. You start blooming right where you are. Sometimes the deepest wounds aren't from what's said, but from what isn't. The phone that doesn't ring, the seat at the table that stays empty, the visit that's always maybe next month. And over time, the silence becomes a kind of language, one we learn to understand without wanting to, one that whispers, "You're not needed anymore." But here's a truth that many of us carry quietly, unsure if we're allowed to say it out loud. So much of our identity was built on giving. We gave our time, our patience, our youth, our sleep, our dreams. We gave and gave and gave because that's what love looked like. And it felt good, didn't it? To be needed, to be the one who could soothe a fever, cheer a broken heart, fix a bad day with just a hug. Then life changes. Children grow, their needs shift, and the house that was once full of chaos and crumbs and little voices grows still. You find yourself folding blankets no one uses, cooking too much food for a table that rarely fills, listening to a voicemail you've saved, just to hear a familiar voice again. And in that space, it's easy to feel like the only way to matter again is to keep giving. Maybe if you offer to babysit more, maybe if you pay for the flight, maybe if you stay quiet when you're hurt, so they don't feel guilty. Maybe if you bend just a little more, they'll come closer. But that's the trap. When we spend our lives overextending ourselves, hoping to win back the closeness we've lost, we end up erasing the very person we most need to hold on to, ourselves. Lily learned this the hard way. She's 71 now, and for decades, she was the glue of her family. She baked for every birthday, kept every secret, smoothed every argument. When her daughter stopped calling regularly after having kids, Lily blamed herself. She told herself, maybe I'm too old to relate. Maybe I'm not helpful anymore. So she tried harder, sent money without being asked, drove hours to visit, always bearing gifts, bit her tongue when she felt dismissed. But no matter how much she did, it wasn't enough to make her feel seen. Until one day, during a visit, she overheard her daughter telling a friend, "My mom always overdoes it. She means well, but it's just too much." It hit her like a wave, not just the words, but the weight of everything she'd been carrying. And she realized, all that effort, all that bending, wasn't bringing them closer. It was pushing them away, because it wasn't coming from peace, it was coming from fear. That was the day Lily decided she would no longer show love through sacrifice. She would show it through steadiness, through presence, through calm. She stopped offering more than was asked. She stopped apologizing for being herself, and slowly, her daughter began to lean in, not because she needed something, but because she felt something different, something grounded, something true. There's a quiet power that comes from no longer needing to be needed, a strength that shows up not in grand gestures, but in boundaries. Yes, boundaries. That word we were never taught to use, let alone honor. But boundaries are not walls, they are doors, and doors can open and close with grace. Madeline, a soft-spoken widow in her late 60s, once told me, "I used to think saying no would make them love me less, but it didn't. It just made them respect me more." When you stop saying yes to things that drain you, you begin to refill. You begin to glow again. You begin to live from a place of fullness, not depletion, and the people around you, they notice. They may not say it out loud. They may not change overnight, but something shifts. Because the version of you they're used to, the one who shrinks, who overgives, who's always available, is no longer there. And in her place stands someone calm, grounded, quietly radiant. You don't need to explain your peace. You don't need to argue for it. You simply live it. And here's where things start to feel lighter. When you begin to honor your own time, your own needs, your own feelings, you start discovering joy again. Not borrowed joy. Not joy that depends on someone else's text or visit or praise, but joy that lives in small things. The smell of your favorite tea in the morning, The way the light hits your window just right at 4 p.m. The feeling of walking without rushing, reading without interruption, laughing at something silly without wondering if anyone else would find it funny. There's no shame in grieving what was, but there's beauty in embracing what is. Henry, a retired postman, told me recently, I used to sit by the phone every Sunday waiting for my son to call. I'd get mad when he didn't, but then I realized he's busy living, and I was busy waiting. So I stopped waiting. I started living too. He joined a local choir, learned to make sourdough, started writing letters to himself, full of stories he never wanted to forget. And on Sundays, he still misses the call. But now he also smiles more, because his world didn't end when the calls stopped. It just asked him to grow in a different direction. That's what healing looks like. Not forgetting, not pretending, just shifting. You're not here to be background music in someone else's life. You're here to be your own melody. Full, clear, steady. The people who truly want to hear it, they will. And those who don't, let them walk in silence. You have your own rhythm to keep now. There's a special kind of courage that blooms when we begin to live for ourselves, not in defiance, but in quiet honor of who we've always been, underneath the roles we played. After 60, so many of us begin to feel like we're fading from the center of the stage. The lights shift. The voices we once guided now guide others. The family table, once our kingdom, becomes a place we're invited to if the schedule allows. But what happens when we stop waiting for the spotlight to find us again, and instead, light the room from where we stand? That's the beauty of living the change. When Claire, who once spent every visit walking on eggshells, began focusing on herself instead of chasing their attention, something shifted in the air. She didn't announce it. She didn't make a scene. She simply stopped asking for scraps of time. She started painting again, found an art group at the library, reconnected with a friend from high school she hadn't seen in years. She wore red lipstick again, just because she liked how it made her feel, not because anyone was looking. And slowly, her sons noticed. At first, it was subtle, a longer phone call, a curious, "What have you been up to, Mom?" Then came a visit not out of obligation, but genuine interest. You see, when we stop chasing validation, we make space for curiosity. When we stop shrinking, others feel the quiet shift in energy. They may not know exactly what's changed, but they feel it. They feel us, steady and present, not desperate or demanding. There's something magnetic about a person who knows their worth, who smiles without trying to impress, who speaks kindly, but doesn't apologize for taking up space. And that kind of presence doesn't shout. It just stands. And that's what Henry meant when he said, "You don't need to be loud to be heard. You only need to stand firmly in your light." It's not about fixing your family or correcting how they treat you. It's about correcting the narrative you've been telling yourself. You were never a burden. You were never too much. You are not someone they've outgrown. You are someone who's still growing. Take Abigail, for example. For years, she poured herself into her grandchildren. Pickups, drop-offs, meals, laundry. She rarely said no even when her back ached or her heart needed rest. She told herself that love meant sacrifice, that being a good mother, a good grandmother, meant never missing a chance to help. But then, one day, her daughter snapped at her. Something small, a miscommunication, but it stung. Not because of what was said, but because of how quickly her effort was forgotten. That night, Abigail sat on the porch with a cup of chamomile and asked herself, what would it look like if I treated myself the way I treat them? The answer was simple, gentle, and life-changing. She started saying no when she was tired. She made plans for herself on weekends. She stopped explaining her choices, and slowly, the dynamic shifted. At first, her daughter pushed back, called less. There were subtle guilt trips. You're not around as much. The kids miss you. I wish you were more available. But Abigail didn't bend. Not in anger, not in rebellion. Just in calm, steady self-respect. And over time, the calls changed. Less about logistics, more about life, more curiosity, more gratitude. Because her daughter wasn't talking to a helper anymore. She was talking to her mother, a woman with boundaries, with peace. You see, when you start valuing your own time, others begin to value it too. and not everyone will understand at first. That's okay. Healing isn't always a shared journey. Sometimes it begins alone, in the silence of your living room, in the pages of a book you finally had time to read, in the warmth of a walk at your own pace, without checking your phone. It begins when you realize that your joy is not dependent on their attention, that your laughter doesn't require their presence, that your life has meaning, deep, rich, beautiful meaning, whether or not they remember to say thank you. The truth is, some people only notice what you do for them when you stop doing it. And that's not cruelty, it's clarity. It's the moment when you see, without bitterness, how deeply you've overextended yourself and how gently you can now return to yourself. Living the change means giving yourself permission to bloom again, to fill your calendar with things that nourish you, to learn something new just for the thrill of it, to be seen by new eyes, new friends, even by yourself in the mirror, and to smile at what you see. You are not behind. You are not late. You are right on time for the life that still belongs to you. Owen, who spent his retirement years angry at how distant his daughters had become, told me something beautiful not long ago. I thought peace would come when they called more, but peace came when I stopped checking the clock. He found joy in simple things, writing postcards to people he'd lost touch with, teaching chess at the community center, feeding birds on his balcony. And in those moments, he rediscovered something precious, his own companionship. And wouldn't you know it? Once he stopped expecting so much from his daughters, they started showing up more, not dramatically, not perfectly, but more present, more curious, more open, because something in Owen had softened, not in weakness, but in wisdom. That's what happens when we embody the change. When we stop begging to be included and start becoming whole in our own company. They feel it. They may not say it, but they do. You don't have to close your heart. You just have to close the door to self-neglect. Let it be a soft, quiet revolution, a gentle standing tall, a deep breath of, I matter even if they don't say it out loud. You've spent a lifetime giving love. Now it's time to give some of that to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, in doing so, you'll remind them not just who you are, but how to love you better. If you're still with me now, I want you to know, truly know, how deeply I appreciate your presence here. You didn't have to keep listening, but you did, and that tells me something powerful. You are ready to live with a little more peace, a little more steadiness, a little more of you at the center of your days. There's a quiet strength in making it this far through the conversation, because this isn't just about family dynamics. It's about a lifetime of patterns, hopes, and heartaches that we've carried in silence, and choosing, today, not to carry them alone. So thank you for your time, thank you for your heart, and thank you for being brave enough to say, I want something gentler now. I wish we lived in a world where love always meant presence, where children never drifted, never forgot, never grew so busy that they lost sight of where they came from. I wish every parent could feel appreciated every day. But real life isn't always tidy like that. Sometimes love looks like absence. Sometimes people show it in flawed, inconsistent ways. And sometimes they don't show it at all. But the absence of their effort does not mean the absence of your worth. Let that settle into your bones. Because the truth is, no matter how distant they grow, your value hasn't moved. You're not here waiting to be picked up like a forgotten belonging. You're still the author of your days, the keeper of your peace, the artist of this next chapter. And yes, it is a new chapter. It may not be what you imagined. Maybe you thought your 60s or 70s would be full of family dinners, spontaneous visits, phone calls about everything and nothing. Maybe you pictured the holidays filled with warmth and stories and laughter, not silence and logistics and disappointment. That grief is real. It deserves to be honored, but so does your future. This stage of life, it doesn't have to be defined by distance. It can be defined by rediscovery. And here's where your power lives, in choosing to nurture the relationships that nourish you. That might be a neighbor who checks in, a friend you've known since childhood, a book club, a walking group, a volunteer team, a garden that grows just because you care for it. Peace often blooms in unexpected places, especially when we stop insisting it come from one specific person. So if your children are distant emotionally, physically, or both, I want you to remember something. You are still allowed to feel joy. You're allowed to decorate your home just the way you like it. To make Sunday mornings sacred, whether they call or not. To plan trips, even small ones, simply because this world still belongs to you. You are allowed to laugh deeply, sleep soundly, dream vividly, not because someone else made you feel special, but because you finally made space for your own company. And maybe someday, your children will notice the shift. Maybe they'll lean in, maybe they won't. But you will be steady either way, because your peace isn't something they can give you or take away. It lives here now, in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you stop apologizing for existing, in the way you light a candle for no reason but your own comfort. And if this message has made you feel seen just a little, I hope you'll take a moment to share your story below. Has your relationship with your adult children changed over time? What helped you move through it? Your words might be the light someone else needs. And if you'd like to keep walking this road together, this journey of self-worth, late blooming, quiet strength, I'd be honored if you clicked subscribe, not out of habit, but out of connection, because voices like yours matter here. Not for what you give, but for who you are. You've carried so much for so long. It's okay to set some of it down now. To exhale, to rest, to smile. Even when no one's watching, you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are becoming still. Always something beautiful. Right here, right now.